Shopping, sex, gambling, anything. It can be purely selfish.
Claire, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Yeah. So, yeah, for the viewers, my name is Melsa Wanyidikira, and this is Inspire. I have a very special guest today with me, and she's going to introduce herself. Claire, would you kindly introduce yourself to the viewers?
Hello, my name is Claire Humphreys. I live in South Wales in the UK, and that's me.
Yeah, Claire, the reason why actually I invited you to this show is because I thought we had to share some ideas regarding mental health.
I think we've all got mental health. You know, we're not exclusive. It's part of our body. It's an organ, just like our kidneys an organ, our heart's an organ. And I think, you know, if my heart is not working correctly, if my kidneys aren't working correctly, it's perfectly acceptable for me to talk about that with my friends, my family, my doctor. And there's a process in which that you can maybe improve that, you can change your lifestyle. And it's the same for our mind. It's just an organ. But the reason why it's so complicated is because it affects how we think, how we talk, how we process. And so we all have mental health, and whatever, it's whether our mental health is something that is livable, or whether it's something that's causing us real problems about choices that we're making, about how our self-esteem is affected, how our confidence, how we engage with life, whether we feel strong, whether we feel weak. You know, it affects everything. So it's very complicated, I think, mental health, but also really simple, because it's something, if we start talking about it, I think that would break a lot of the pain that is associated with poor mental health and processing.
But how come some people are more vulnerable to stress and mental health, and others really remain resilient?
That's if I had that answer, I'd be a really wealthy woman. I think it's, you know, there's going to be people that will be born, and their genetics, their genetic disposition is that their mind has got, the way that it's made up will mean that they will end up with a mental health illness. That's medically proven. But there will be, and there's a process for that, for people to live with that and live really happy lives with that condition. There's also, I think, childhood trauma, the way that we're brought up, our culture. And, you know, resilience is something that, you know, I think your personality, you can be kind of quite buoyant, as, you know, gifted. That can be part of who you are as an individual. But sometimes you've got to learn resilience. I know, you know, being a parent, I have to teach my son about resilience. He might have it in him already to have that bounce back, but actually there's some situations which are really hard, a lot harder to negotiate and bounce back from. And I think, once again, I go back to talking about things. You know, if I can talk to somebody through my process and thinking, and the pains that I'm feeling, and the reality of what an experience does to my mind, then already I'm breaking it down so that I can find a way to bounce back, to be more resilient. I think lifestyle choices as well. Certainly my personal experience and my mental health journey, you know, I couldn't cope with life on life's terms. I found it really difficult. You know, I had a faith in God and I thought that was sufficient. But the reality was, when life was difficult, when relationships were hard, when I was financially in trouble, I turned to alcohol and drugs to cope with that. You know, that was my coping mechanism. And that is cause and effect. You know, what comes first sometimes is your mental health in a poor state, or you're unable to control, or you're an addict, you know. And my experience is that I thought for many years that my mental health was the problem, and I was just using cannabis, a lot of cannabis. And I'd be using cannabis to kind of say self-regulate, to self-medicate, I used to say to myself. But actually, you know, it was when my life completely fell apart about 6 years ago, when I realized actually I need to stop using drugs and drink as a solution to me dealing with life. And once I was able to find a process to put down the drink and the drugs, I was able to say, hang on a minute, my mind isn't really that great. And so I could start looking at my mental health. And actually all along, for me, my experience was I was just an addict. And now my mental health feels healthy as long as I look after my mental health.
Right.
And that's a whole different conversation about how do we look after our mental health.
Yeah, but then this really brings a question: does alcohol and drug dependence cause mental health, or does mental health cause drug and alcohol dependence? Which one comes first? I don't know, because sometimes we tend to confuse it. When someone is really alcohol and drug dependent, we tend to think that this person is mentally ill, or when they are mentally ill, they might go to drugs and alcohol. So I don't know how to really differentiate. Which one came first?
I think it's very personal. Like I say, for me, it was, you know, I thought I had a mental health problem, but actually I was an addict, you know, and I needed to sort out my addiction first. And then my mental health was, I say, okay, I have to work on it. It's not like all of a sudden I stopped drinking and stopped using drugs and everything was fine. No, I had to work on myself. I think that alcohol, I don't really know the answer to that question. It's really personal. And I think that it's really tricky, you know, within the field of drug and alcohol and substance misuse, you know, there's this dual diagnosis, they call it, whereby your alcohol and your substance misuse is out of control, and also you've got mental health problems. So they kind of work together.
I'm so glad you're out of it. But how did you really make that decision? I mean, realizing that this is not my life, I should be having a different life. How did that happen? Did someone have to like remind you that you had to live a different lifestyle, or you just didn't like the lifestyle?
It was about 14 years ago. I first realized I had a problem when I found out I was pregnant. And, you know, I had a job, you know, I was kind of responsible. But it was all about, you know, my life revolved around me being able to use drugs. And then I found out I was pregnant and I was like, oh, that's okay. I can just stop. That's no problem. But actually it was a problem because I realized I couldn't stop. And so I found there's a 12-step fellowship. 12 Steps of Alcoholics Anonymous is where it started. And it's a book, and it's 12 steps that you follow in order to process things better, so you don't have to drink and use drugs. So I started to go into that group, but I didn't want it. I didn't want to stop really, because I didn't know how to cope with life. So my child was born, and before you knew it, I was back there, you know, oh, I'll just have a glass of wine, I'll have a beer. And then before I knew it, oh, I'll just have a spliff, you know, and it just escalated. And before I knew it, I was back on the cycle, and it felt like a hamster wheel to me. It was just, and I just couldn't stop, and I just didn't stop. And so for about, oh gosh, my timing's very bad. So it was a long period of time where I knew that I was an addict. I knew I couldn't stop, but I didn't want to, you know. And what happened was there was a sequence of events, you know, 6 years ago, in 2014, you know, I'd moved to so many different places. I'd had so many different jobs. I'd fallen out with different friends. I was awkward. I felt, but ultimately my soul was broken. I was a shell. I was lost. And I'd pretend, because I got a nice smile and, you know, I pretend that I was okay, but inside I was dying. I was dying. And I tried to, you know, end my life a few times. And I was always on the phone to helplines, just saying, help me, help me. I just wanted somebody else to help me. And eventually, sadly, a friend of mine passed away. And I think for me, it was that wake up moment. You know, I wasn't parenting very well. I was there, but I wasn't emotionally there. And, you know, I was going to get fired from my job. You know, I was absolutely broken, a broken shell. Financially, everything was just broken. And my family were really hurt, in pain. And I just couldn't do it anymore. And I guess I just surrendered and I waved the flag and I just said, I'm done, but I know that I need to go back to, and I went back to the 12-step program. And, you know, I didn't want to die, I suppose was the point. I didn't want to die, but I didn't know how to live. And so the last 6 years have being part of the 12-step fellowship, which has been really important to me, but also finding what God meant to me. What was my relationship with God? Because always my relationship with God was about I wasn't good enough, that I wasn't ever going to make much. You know, it wasn't a God of love and grace and forgiveness. That wasn't my God. But that became my God once I kind of acknowledged who I was. And that process still goes on today, you know. And you know, my mental health through that whole time, you know, when I was using before the 6 years, I was taking loads of antidepressants. And I think sometimes they're useful for people. I was abusing them so much. You know, I'd take too many and I'd make up stories so I could get better medication that would really knock me out. And, you know, I was just using the system, you know. And that's not the case anymore. You know, when I stopped on the 28th of February 2014 was the last time I ever had a drink or drug or any medication that wasn't prescribed to me. And that's when you know, it's all been part of my journey of mental well-being. But today I need to be conscious of my mental health. I can't just go, oh, that's it, that's done and dusted. There's things that I need to do each day to keep the peace that I've been given.
Yeah. Like what you have to do each day?
It's quite simple, really. I wake up in the morning and I pray. You know, for me, in the 12-step group, it's a higher power, they call it. So people will have different higher powers. For me, mine's, you know, Jesus, God. And in the morning, I pray to him and I say, you know, use my life, make me useful. And I do some just sit with myself for a bit. You know, some people call it meditation, mindfulness. For me, it's just sitting still and being with myself. And I do some reading just to reflect on my thinking processes, sometimes in the Bible, sometimes something from anywhere, really. That's just really nutritious for my mind, you know. And then what I do then, I'm really conscious of other people then throughout my day. So, you know, addiction is a really selfish illness. You know, it's all about us. It's all about us. And I found that what I've learned is if my life can be about serving other people, then I'm not constantly in my own mind. By helping other people, it builds my self-esteem. It makes me feel worthwhile. It makes me feel valued. It means that I'm a good citizen again. You know, it's not all about what can I get out of life. It's what can I give to life. And I find God really uses that.
You've just said that addiction is all about ourselves. So that means whatever we do excessively can turn into addiction, whether drinking, whether alcohol dependence, whether even shopping, whatever we do excessively.
Shopping, sex, gambling, anything. It can be purely selfish, yeah. And so I have somebody that helps me to do things, you know. I call my friends. I try and stay connected with people. And, you know, addiction and poor mental health can really disconnect you from people and make you feel really isolated. And I think I have to be really purposeful about connecting with people. Like I don't really want to tell people how I really feel, but I know that in telling people how I really feel, that helps me and it might help them as well. And so I have to do that on a daily basis. And in the evening, I have a little review of myself. Was I selfish today? Was I thoughtful today? Was I resentful today? And I look at my patterns of behaviors and I evaluate them, and then I hand them over to God and I just say, right, that's my day done. Thank you for another day that you've given me. And I go to sleep, and with gratefulness in my heart. You know, gratitude is something I've learned to massively appreciate.